Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're Boston University Financial Assistants. I'm Liberty Collum and this is Ken Kowalczyk.
Hello.
We'll be giving you an overview of financial aid at Boston University, how to apply, some tips to make the process go smoothly, and of course at the end we'll be available to answer your questions. I also want to assure you that you don't have to memorize everything that we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to send you a follow-up email after this broadcast that has a link to the video, so you can go back and reference it if you need to in the future. And it will also be available on the admissions website for your reference there. So the first thing I want to reinforce for you is that admissions and financial aid should really be thought of as a hand-in-hand application process. You should be applying for admission and financial aid at the same time. If you wait to apply for financial aid until after you found out whether or not you were admitted, it may be too late. The aid that you might have been eligible for may already be committed to somebody else. So it's important that you apply on time. Our application deadlines are not flexible, and that you complete your application. So you'll have two applications that you'll need to complete, the CSS profile and the FAFSA, and Ken's going to talk to you a little bit more about those in a minute, and he's also going to go into detail about what those deadlines are. So probably you're here tonight because financial feasibility is important to you and you're wondering about, whether or not you'll be able to, afford the cost of Boston University. And you can see here that we have some national student loan default rates listed. You can see that the national student loan default rate is 10.8% and BU's it was 1.2%. And really what that tells me is that BU students are coming to school, they're graduating, they're getting jobs, and they're able to pay back the loans that they've taken. So that's just one representation of the value that you're getting from a BU education. It is worth the investment that you're going to make. Even though it's a big purchase, it's going to be worth the investment. You're still wondering, but how much is BU really going to cost you? You know how much BU costs. You can see it right on our website. But it's important to remember that that is the sticker price. It's not necessarily what Boston University is going to cost you. So until you apply for financial aid and receive an aid award, you're not going to know what the cost is going to be when you're attending here. Another good reason to apply for financial aid at BU is because of the BU Scholarship Assurance. The BU Scholarship Assurance says that the aid that you are offered from the university in your first year is guaranteed for each of your remaining undergraduate years. So it's a plan you can count on. You can plan around that. Also, the application process for financial aid gets simpler because of the scholarship assurance. You only complete the CSS profile, which is required for being considered for need-based financial aid in your first year. You do have to complete the FAFSA every year because if you want to be considered for federal and state aid, but the profile is only the first year. So that's one of the benefits of the BU Scholarship Assurance. So I keep talking about applying for aid, but you're probably wondering, what does it mean in terms of the aid that we can award? Unfortunately, we can't award every student up to their full financial aid need, which is why we do need you to apply on time as much as possible to make sure you put yourself in the best possible position for the aid that you're eligible for. But you can see that we award more than $240 million to undergraduates in aid this past year. 88% of freshmen who applied for aid and enrolled received financial aid, and also 92% of financial need on average was met for our freshman aid recipients. So those are a lot of great numbers, but let's skip past the numbers a little bit now and hear what it's like for a student who has been impacted by financial assistance at Boston University.
When I was looking for a college to attend for undergraduate, I knew that I wanted a school that could both provide me with academic opportunities as well as opportunities to learn through work. BU really stuck out to me because the human physiology program here at Sargent not only prepares me for the science basis of what I want to go into, but I learn a lot more about my field and how to apply my work later on. And there's also a lot of internship and work opportunities in research and clinical work here. So one of the activities that I'm heavily involved in is Global Medical Brigades, a large nonprofit organization with many chapters at different schools. Here at BU, we specifically work in Honduras, and we'll go down and help in specific villages, and then those villages will also receive brigades from the other parts of the organization, and the eventual goal is that they'll become self-sustainable. What I really love about Global Medical Brigades is how much you can learn while giving back. I've definitely realized more and more with my studies that I won't be able to be successful in my career as a healthcare professional if I don't have underlying motives to improve healthcare at large. Receiving a scholarship from BU for my undergraduate studies was definitely a main factor in allowing me to come here. I think with financial insecurity that comes with college sometimes, it inhibits people from being able to do as much as they want to do. So having financial security from BU has really allowed me to not only remain engaged in my studies here, but also look towards the future and what else I want to continue studying.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed hearing from one of our great BU students. So obviously, I've reinforced a couple of times it's important to apply for aid and that you can apply now because you don't know what the cost is going to be for you until you apply. So I've harped on it a lot, so I want now to have Ken tell you a little bit about how you go about this applying for aid.
Thank you, Liberty. So if you intend on applying for as much financial assistance as you can possibly qualify for here at Boston University, you're going to need to complete two different financial aid applications. The first is called the FAFSA application, also known as the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The second is called the CSS Profile application. Now, some colleges only require that you complete a FAFSA to have a complete financial aid application. But many private universities, including Boston University, requires both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. We encourage you to link to both forms from our financial aid website, where you can also find helpful tips for completing these aid applications and working through the aid application process. So that FAFSA application is primarily used to determine your eligibility for federal and state financial assistance. This includes the Pell Grant, different state grants, the SEO grant, federal work study, and federal student loans. Also, you must complete a FAFSA application if a student's parents intend on applying for a Parent Plus loan on a student's behalf to help pay for the student's college expenses. On that FAFSA application, you're going to enter information about the student's income and assets and the income and assets for the student's parents. If a student's parents are divorced or separated and no longer live together, then you only need to provide information about the student and the parents with whom that student lives. CSS Profile application is used to determine students' eligibility for Boston University grants and scholarship funding. While the FAFSA application only asks for income and asset information from the student and from the parents that the student lives with, Profile application asks for income and asset information from the student and from all parents. If the student has step parents, that information is required as well. So there are special instructions for students to complete the profile application when that student has parents who are divorced or separated, no longer living together. First, the student will begin to complete the profile application by listing their parents' name and demographic information. After they've done that, they'll move on to completing the CSS profile with their income and asset info and the income and asset info for the parent or parents with whom they live with. After that profile application has been completed, the parent that the student does not live with will then complete a separate CSS profile application using a separate login credentials. After that second profile application has been completed, both of those applications will be received by Boston University and combined together for a complete CSS profile. If circumstances make it impossible for a student to provide their parents' information, we do have waiver request forms that can be found on our website and forwarded along to my office for our review and for our consideration. So applying for financial assistance is a relatively straightforward process, but it is helpful to have some information prepared ahead of time before you dive into that FAFSA and profile application. Most of the information that you will need can be found on your family's 2017 federal income tax returns. So it's helpful to have a copy of your 2017 1040 statements and all of your 2017 W-2 forms. You also need to provide information about your family's assets, so having documentation on hand about the cash, savings, and checking accounts, and any investment accounts that the student and parents have access to will also be helpful. Both of these applications ask for information about who's living in the household and who's being supported by the student's parents, so that information is going to be important as well. And finally, you'll need Social Security numbers for the student and parents when you're completing the FAFSA and profile applications. Now, when you're completing that FAFSA application, you will be asked if you would like to use the IRS data retrieval tool to electronically import your income tax data directly from the IRS to your FAFSA application. We strongly recommend that you use the IRS data retrieval tool for 3 reasons. First, it makes completing your financial aid application a lot quicker and a lot easier for you. Second, it ensures the accuracy of the information that you're providing to us on that FAFSA. And third, it makes the financial aid office's job of verifying all that information that much quicker and easier so that you can get an accurate financial aid award that much sooner. Again, it's super important that you provide your Social Security number on your financial aid applications and your common application for admission. So you'll need that on the Common App, the CSS profile, and on your FAFSA application. If you forget your Social Security number on any or several of these applications, then your applications for financial assistance will be considered incomplete. My office will not be able to link all of these together and review those. And what this will most likely mean is that you will not be able to receive as much financial assistance as you otherwise could have been qualified for had you submitted your applications with accurate Social Security number information. So please make sure you include that, and please make sure that information is accurate. It's also super important to keep in mind the financial aid application deadlines. Whether you're applying for the early decision 2 round of admission or for a regular decision population, the financial aid application deadlines are January the 2nd. Super important that you do submit your financial aid applications to us by this priority deadline. If you do not do so, then you will be seriously jeopardizing our ability to award you as much financial assistance as you otherwise may have been able to receive. Simple reason for this is that our financial aid resources are limited, and there is a certain point when we're awarding this money where we start to run out of it. So again, please pay attention to those deadlines and make sure you file on time. A lot of families would like to know how exactly it is we determine your eligibility for financial assistance. I think the easiest way to explain that is with the simplified formula that we have here on the slide in front of us. That's to say, your eligibility for financial assistance is simply the difference between the cost of attendance for the year and the expected family contribution that we calculate using all the information that you provide on those aid applications. Cost of attendance is simply the combination of the billed and the non-billed expenses for the academic year. Billed expenses include tuition, fees, and room and board charges. These are the things that you're going to see on your fall and spring semester bill. Non-billed expenses are those charges that students are not going to be billed directly for, but these are expenses that every college student will incur, so it's important to budget ahead of time for these. These include books and supplies, personal expenses, and transportation expenses. Everybody's mileage is going to vary a little bit with these non-billed expenses, but every student is going to incur these when they come to college, so you do want to plan ahead for these. This brings us to the expected family contribution. What the expected family contribution is not is what a financial aid office thinks your family can afford to pay out of pocket for the course of a normal academic year. For most families that we work with, that's very unrealistic. What the expected family contribution really gets at is our assessment of your family's ability to absorb the cost of attendance over a long-term period of time. We're thinking about paying for college just like we would any other major investment that we'd make in our life. Most folks that I know don't have the ability to buy a new car today, pay for that in cash out of pocket, drive that car off the lot, and be all done with their car payments. Same could be said about a college education. Many students end up paying for their college education for a number of years after they've received their diploma. That's what we really mean when we're talking about expected family contributions. Not what we think you can pay today or even over the course of a 4-year college education. We think you can absorb over many years, both during the college education for many years after that's wrapped up. You can see here on this slide in front of us, majority of a student's costs for a typical academic year are made up of tuition and room and board charges, easily about 3/4 of the cost of attendance at Boston University. All said, when you're talking about both those billed and non-billed expenses, cost of attendance for this current academic year is just under $73,000. Now, the 4 basic types of financial assistance you may see in a financial aid award package. Merit scholarships are awarded to students on a limited basis here at Boston University for those folks who demonstrate through their admission application that they are academically, artistically, or athletically very competitive amongst the incoming class. Need-based scholarships may be awarded to students who complete their financial aid applications and who demonstrate financial eligibility. We also review need-based scholarship eligibility based on a component of academic competitiveness and on the basis of funding that we have available at the time we received your financial aid application. May be surprised to see student loans in a financial aid package, but many students who apply for financial assistance do receive some federal student loans as part of their total financial aid award. Just because you've received federal student loans in your financial aid package doesn't mean you need to accept those, and they can be accepted or declined at a student's discretion. Last kind of financial assistance you may see in your award package are federal student loans. Federal work study. Work study money is awarded to students who demonstrate eligibility for financial assistance, who also indicate on their FAFSA application that they are interested in working a work study job. Students who receive work study have access to both on-campus and off-campus jobs through the university's Student Employment Office. These students typically earn anywhere between minimum wage and $12, maybe $14 an hour, depending on the job they find here. And they work between maybe 4 to 12 hours a week, again, depending on the job they find and depending, of course, on their class schedule. Students' financial aid award package may have financial aid that comes from a variety of different sources, including Boston University itself. You may see financial assistance from your local state government. You may see financial assistance from the federal government as well. Besides these 3 financial aid sources, many students are able to access financial assistance through private scholarship agencies. There are a lot of different private scholarships that are out there that you can apply to and use to help pay for a college degree. And it might take a lot of legwork by a student to apply for as many private scholarships as they may qualify for, but these can make the difference in how you pay for and how you afford college. A good place to start looking for different private scholarships is with a high school's guidance counselor office. And our website also has a list of different private scholarship resources that you can look into and start researching and applying for.
Thank you, Ken. So just some quick tips and reminders of things that we have already talked about to make the application process go smoothly. One thing I do want to mention is we keep talking about completing the aid applications, and if you haven't looked into it already, you may not know that those applications were actually available to complete as early as October 1st of this past year. Of this current year, I should say. So that is something that you can do even tonight if you're so inspired. So The first reminder that I want to give you is that you have the ability to tell the financial aid office if you have any special circumstances, things that you think might impact your ability to pay for college that you haven't been able to express through the FAFSA and profile applications. The profile specifically does give you the opportunity to put in some narrative information, not just hard numbers, but if you feel like you weren't able to express it there, you can certainly send us information via email or even a hard copy letter, and we will review that before we make a financial aid decision. Speaking of sending things to the office, keep copies of any documents that you submit to our office or any aid office. That way, if you need to go back and see what it was you told us, you'll have easy access to it. And if we have questions about it, you'll be able to respond easily. A lot of the correspondence that you'll have with our office will be via email, so we recommend creating a BU email folder. Just put everything about BU there, and that way, again, it's easy to find if you need to reference it later. You'll also be able to figure out where you are in the application process through the MyBU portal. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in a second, but it's something you want to check frequently to make sure you're up to date on all the things that we are requesting. Also, when you're trying to make a plan about coming up with options to pay the family share that Ken was talking about, what's left over after your financial aid has been applied to your overall costs, make sure you're considering all options. Really do think about, is a payment plan something that might be an option for you, or are student loans either in the student's name or the parent's name, something beyond the federal loans that might be part of the financial aid package. Just know what your options are, even if it's some that you may choose are not right for you. When you're making that plan, it's really important to think about it as a plan for all 4 years. Don't come up with a plan just for the first year, because then you might get caught up short when the bill comes around your second year, and certainly you don't want to be put in that position. So make sure you have a plan. That's another nice thing about the BU Scholarship Assurance. It helps you get to that 4-year plan. And then most importantly, if you have questions, ask us. That is one of the primary reasons we are here, is to help you through the application process. So please be sure to get in touch with us. I'm going to make sure that you have our email address and our phone number. So if you don't have a question now, but you find you have one later, you'll be able to reach out to us as you go through the application process over the next few weeks. So the MyBU portal is a resource for students to be able to check in on where they are in their admissions application, as well as where they are in their financial aid application. This is also the place that you're going to come back to find out about whether or not you're admitted and what your financial aid award is going to look like. In addition, you'll be coming back here again after you have found out if you've been admitted to help you with the process of deciding whether or not BU is the right place for you. So MyBU portal is going to be a significant resource for you as you go through deciding whether or not BU is the right place for you. So that's all the remarks that we wanted to give you today, but we do want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So my colleague Rebecca has been seeing your questions online. She's going to be passing them to us. But while we're waiting to get those first ones, I just once again want to draw your attention to the BU Financial Aid website. It's on 24 hours a day. So if you have a question at 2 a.m., we will not be here to answer your questions, but you can use the great resource that is the financial aid website. You can also send us an email at finaid@bu.edu or call us Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But we are available to answer questions now, so we are going to get to that.
All right. Question number one.
Question number one. Okay, so if you are a single parent and you want to tell us about that, how do you do that? And then also, if you feel like you're not able to provide information from the parent the student doesn't live with, how do you go about telling us about that? So how do you submit a waiver request? Well, you have the opportunity to submit a waiver request. We understand that there are circumstances that will prevent a family from being able to provide information about that parent that they don't live with. So the waiver request is available on our website, and you can send that to our office. And you want to make sure you send it directly to Boston University. There may be an opportunity to provide that to the College Board through the CSS profile. We don't want you to do that. We want you to send it directly to us. Some schools do ask for the waiver request to go through the College Board. That's not true at BU, so you want to send it to us. So go to our website, find the waiver request form, print it out, complete it, send it in, and we will consider it. And then the financial aid award will be based, if we're able to waive it, it will be based just on the parent that the student lives with.
Question number 2, when can we expect a financial aid award? What is the timeline for that? Okay, for our regular decision population, the financial aid awards are released same time as the admission decisions. That's typically the end of March, 3rd or 4th weekend of March is for our regular decision population. Early decision 2?
It is going to be, I don't remember the exact release date. It is going to be mid-January. It's a pretty short timeline.
Yeah.
So you will definitely have if you're applying early decision 2, you will definitely, if you apply on time for financial aid, you will definitely have a financial aid decision prior to having to make your decision about whether or not you're coming to BU. So you will have a financial aid award along with your admission decision if you apply on time. I do want to just quickly circle back to the single parent question. I think that I want to make sure that I say if you are a single parent who does not have a secondary parent, if you are maybe a parent who adopted a child as a single person, that is okay. You actually have the opportunity to tell us about that through the CSS profile application. So you wouldn't even need to go through the waiver process. The waiver process is intended for parents who both parents are still are not living together, but are available to provide information.
Next up, regarding the BU scholarship assurance, if a student has a change of financial circumstances and they believe that they have more eligibility in future years, say for example, the family has spent a portion of their assets in paying for a BU education, or maybe there's been a change in the family's income, what happens to the BU scholarship assurance? Does that stay as it is? The award that we give in your first year, that BU Scholarship Assurance, is something you consider as a baseline. That's where you're going to start, and something that you can make your enrollment plan based on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's all that we're able to provide to you for all of your undergraduate years here at BU. You will have an opportunity to appeal for additional financial assistance, and if you do feel like your financial circumstances have changed, we certainly would like you to get in touch with our office so we can review those changes in financial circumstances and see if we can help support you with an increase to your scholarship here at BU.
Okay, so this sort of speaks to what Ken was just talking about. The question was, my 2018 or 2019 income is very different from 2017, which is the information that you're going to be providing on this year's applications. So what do I do? How do I let you know about that? That is something that I would encourage you to put in the special circumstances of the profile, or send us an email or a letter to bring that to our attention. With everyone, we begin by assessing your eligibility based on the 2017 tax year. However, depending on the circumstances, we may be able to take a lower income into consideration as part of our original decision or as part of a request for additional financial assistance. So we encourage you to let us know if that's your situation.
Okay. Next question is about those unbilled expenses. Can you give us an estimate of extra out-of-pocket expenses a student may need while they're on campus, such as for transportation, personal expenses? Like I mentioned before, everybody's mileage is going to vary a little bit. So I think maybe putting together a budget for your student before attending BU would be helpful. I can give some general estimates for transportation around the city. Last I checked, the MBTA pass for the month was just under $80, I believe. That's unlimited rides on any of the trains or the bus here around the city per month. As far as personal expenses, that's pretty tough to, I think, eyeball. I mean, we have a general line item that we use for quoting that total cost of attendance, and I believe that's about $1,200 per year, $600 approximately per semester. Again, depending on your personal spending habits, it might be a lot more, it might be a lot less. It might be something that student and parents would want to kind of sit down together and discuss before enrolling at BU.
The good news is a lot of the expenses that students will have will be included in billed expenses, like their housing and all of their food is going to be included. So it is something that as a family you're just going to want to discuss to figure out what works for you all.
Okay, next question.
Okay. So selective service. Male students who are over the age of 18 are required to complete selective service to be considered for federal financial assistance. And we do require, Boston University does require that a student's done all of the steps to be eligible for federal financial aid to be considered for need-based financial aid. So making sure that you have signed up for selective service is important. So what is it? It means that you are letting the government know that you are available, potentially eligible to be selected to serve the country. That is something that you can do through a federal website for selective service, and I would encourage you to do that. I think you might still be able to do it by postcard as well, but the best thing to do is to just search selective service, and you'll be able to get to the federal website to be able to complete it. That is a question on the FAFSA.
Right on. All right, next up, appeal process. So after a student has been awarded and they're interested in appealing for additional financial assistance, is there a process for doing that? How does that work? There's a process, and we do look at appeals from students after we've released our initial awards. Unlike applying for financial assistance initially with that FAFSA application, the profile application, the appeal process is a lot less formal. We don't have a specific form or application that you necessarily need to complete. The process really starts by hearing from you. You're welcome to give our office a call and speak with the assistant director that manages your student's financial assistance. You send us an email or fax us a letter, or however you want to get in touch with us to let us know, hey, BU, appreciate the financial assistance you've offered so far. We're interested in appealing for additional aid. These are the reasons why. And then you let us know. Typically, what we'd like to know about are things that the financial aid applications may not have done a good job of capturing, or if there's been a change in your family's financial circumstances since you applied with the FAFSA and profile application. Second part of this question is likelihood of approval. I think that depends on the appeal itself and the circumstances that we're reviewing. We do review everybody's appeal on a case-by-case basis. Everybody's appeal is different. Everybody's financial circumstances are different, and we are sensitive to those circumstances. There is. Oh, yes, there is. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So. If you're sending information to the office, and I think this actually does go really well with what Ken was just talking about, if you're sending any correspondence to the university, when you send it, please include the student's name and Boston University ID number, which will be assigned as part of as you start your admissions application process. Include that Social Security, not the Social Security number, the Boston University ID number on any correspondence you send, because there may be, we're a large university, we have a lot of people applying, and there may be more than one person who has your name. Or if it's a parent who's corresponding with us, a lot of parents and students don't have the same last name, so do yourself and us a favor by making sure you include the student's full name and the Boston University ID number, and then we'll know who it is that is contacting us and how we can best serve you.
All right. Next up, do we have to file a FAFSA and profile application for merit aid consideration? Okay. While financial eligibility is not a component of a student being selected for a merit scholarship, we do want to make sure that a student completes the common application for admission by December the 1st to apply for our merit scholarships here at Boston University, to be considered for those. FAFSA and a profile is not necessary for merit scholarship consideration, however.
Right. And if you think that you're going to need financial assistance to be able to attend Boston University, even if you're not sure if you would qualify, we encourage you to please complete the applications, because you don't know and we don't know until we've had the chance to evaluate your applications whether or not you're qualified. And honestly, I think there are a lot of families who thought they might not qualify who end up qualifying, and it makes BU possible for them. So I would encourage you to do that. We've just also gotten a question about our applicants who are U.S. citizens, but they're living outside of the United States, and whether or not there's any aid available for them. So the aid program here at BU really does focus pretty strongly on students who are U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens, like students with who are green card holders. But it doesn't matter whether or not you live in the United States. So U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens who live outside of the U.S. still can apply for aid. They would complete the FAFSA and the profile, and they would give the information. Even if their family's income is not in U.S. dollars, there is a way to interpret that through the application, so we can consider you for aid. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of opportunity for awarding financial assistance to our international student population, but for our U.S. citizens who are living outside of the U.S., there are options.
Exactly. Okay. Next question. Student asks, if I was admitted and I decide to defer for a gap year, do I need to reapply for, I assume, financial assistance? Yeah, okay, that's it. Very good. You will not have to reapply for admission. There's a quick form that admissions will request you to complete to apply for deferral and to qualify for deferring your admission. But financial assistance, yes, you will need to complete the FAFSA application and the profile application and provide that current year income and your current asset information for us to review for when you return the year after your gap year.
Yeah, and it is important to know that if you receive a financial aid award and then decide to defer, that financial aid award is not guaranteed. So that's why you do have to go through the application process again. Even though I told you you only needed to complete the CSS profile once, if you decide to take a gap year and defer your admission, unfortunately, you do have to complete it a second time.
Question about meal plans. Do we cover the cost of a meal plan with financial assistance? The short answer is yes, but the financial assistance that we award isn't really earmarked for any specific cost in your cost of attendance. We don't award, for the most part, we don't award scholarships just for tuition. We don't award need-based scholarships just for your meal plan expenses or your travel expenses. It all goes towards the total cost of attendance. There are some minor caveats there. We do have a need-based grant that is called the Charles River Housing Grant. If a student receives that, they are required to maintain residence on the university's housing on the Charles River Housing campus to maintain eligibility for that scholarship. But short answer, no, we do not have any specific scholarships that are attached to the meal plan itself.
But your aid could end up covering it depending on your eligibility.
Right. Okay. So question for a student who's completing the financial aid applications who reference having siblings enrolled in college and wondering if that makes a difference in how we review your eligibility. Sibling enrollment is a very important driver of a student's eligibility for financial assistance. Besides household income, sibling enrollment in an undergraduate degree-seeking program is the second biggest driver of how much financial aid eligibility a student is going to have. We also do look at what type of college a sibling is saying that they are going to be enrolling in. So we do recognize there's a difference between cost at a four-year private school versus a four-year public school versus a community college. So those different factors are cooked back into our calculations and reviewed to determine your eligibility.
And that's for institutional financial aid, for Boston University aid.
Right.
That is important. I'm going to let you take that one since you addressed that initially.
Okay. So somebody's asking about the merit deadline of December the 1st. Does that mean I will not be considered for any merit aid? No, that does not mean you will not be considered for any merit aid. There's many different kinds of merit scholarships you may qualify for here at Boston University. There are a suite of different merit scholarships that are what we refer to generally as presidential scholarships. And that is what we're looking to see that you apply for admission by December 1st by. If you are a student athlete and you've been recruited to play for one of our sports on campus, the December 1st application deadline, it doesn't have anything to do with BU Athletics' ability to award you athletic-based scholarship. If you are applying for the College of Fine Arts, that December 1st application deadline doesn't play a role in the school choosing you to receive a College of Fine Arts merit scholarship, for example.
Since I'm the one who addressed this one the first time, I'll take this one. So it sounds like there's still some concerns about selective service. What does it mean? What it does mean essentially is that students registering for the selective service or people registering for a selective service would be eligible for the draft. And that is what you're doing. It is a federal law. To be eligible for federal financial assistance, you do have to register for selective service, and that to be considered eligible for federal financial aid. Males, yes, and it is male students.
Okay. Next question. I am currently unemployed. Can you consider my eligibility using 2018 tax information? There is a portion on the CSS profile where you can report 2018 income and your anticipated 2019 income, and we do encourage that you complete those fields to the best of your ability as well. On a case-by-case basis, we may be able to use that when we're reviewing your financial aid eligibility. Okay.
Do you want to take that one? Okay.
How are 529 plans taken into consideration on the FAFSA and the profile? This is a great question. 529 plans are reported on the FAFSA and the profile as a parent asset, not a student asset. We recognize that these are savings that are going towards a student's education, but these are assets that are held by the parent. Our calculations actually look at parent and student assets a little bit differently too, so it is important to make sure you're reporting 529 plans as a parent asset. Typically, we see them reported in the fields marked as investment assets owned by the parent.
So this question is regarding age of parents, and does the age of a parent, perhaps someone who's closer to retirement, does that have an impact on eligibility? And that is something that is taken into consideration, particularly in the federal calculation for aid. So we are considering that assets may be needed for retirement, but it is important to know that when you're completing both the FAFSA and the profile, you should not be providing information about your tax advantage retirement, your specific retirement plans, like an IRA or a 403B or a 401k. The values of those accounts do not come into consideration when determining eligibility for financial aid. The question is asked on the profile, but it's strictly informational. It does not inform whether or not you're going to be eligible for financial aid. So retirement assets don't ultimately end up changing a student's eligibility for financial aid.
Okay, that's a good one. Parents filed their taxes together in 2017, but are now not together, separated or divorced. Can we still use the IRS data retrieval tool? There's no reason why that marital status will prevent you from using the IRS data retrieval tool, but importing your income tax data using the DRT will present some complications for reviewing a student's eligibility. So what I suggest is you can do that, but on the CSS profile application and on the profile application, I would make a good note about the student's parents' marital status, and to the best of your ability, include only the income and asset information for the parent that the student does not live with on that second CSS profile application, so that we can go back while we're reviewing everything, kind of separate things out and say, okay, this information here, this belongs to the parent that the student lives with. This information that we know about here from this other form, this is for the parent the student does not live with, and we can make heads and tails out of that. This can get a little bit complicated, so if you have questions about completing an aid application when you have a parent situation where they're no longer living together, definitely feel free to get in touch with our office and we can provide you with some more specific guidance.
So if you feel like you need to tell us about special circumstances, how specific should you be? I would say medium specific. As an example, if you are a family who has had a large amount of unreimbursed medical expenses and you're concerned about needing to make those payments and how that might impact your ability to pay for college, you can tell us about the total that was unreimbursed. You don't need to send us all of your canceled checks or all of the bills that you paid. You can tell us about the totals. If we need more specifics after the fact, we will get in contact with you. But if you simply tell us that you have large unreimbursed medical expenses, it'll be harder for us to be able to have that impact your eligibility for aid. So if you can be specific or give specific estimates of whatever the issue is in terms of dollars, that is helpful, but you don't necessarily need to send us reams of supporting documentation. If we feel like we need additional documentation, we'll let you know, but upfront, good estimates of the actual cost of the things that you need to tell us about are very helpful.
Okay, next up. Do you take household debt into consideration? Parent-student loan debt, for example. We do not have the ability to take household debt into consideration. So credit card debt, student loan debt. Debt like that is something that we have no way of objectively reviewing in a way that allows us to equitably award limited amount of financial assistance that we have access to here. So no, we don't take that specific household debt into consideration. However, our financial aid calculations do account for many different allowances that we recognize a family has in terms of their different expenses. So while we may not take your specific monthly rent payments or mortgage payments into consideration, we do make allowances into our calculations that account for what you pay in housing, an assessment for an estimate on what a family may be paying in food expenses for a typical year, expenses and just getting to and from work. So specific debt, no, but we do have ways of accounting generally for a family's expenses.
Okay, so this question is, how do you determine the non-contribution if there's joint custody? So the parents, so the student lives with both parents equally, which is not at all unusual. When you're completing the application, the applications, as a family, you're going to need to make a determination about which parent is going to be the parent on the FAFSA and which parent is going to be the parent on the primary profile application. One good way to look at that is if the student lives with both parents equally, look at which parent provides more of the financial resources, if that's possible. If the families provide everything exactly equally, you're just going to have to make a judgment call as to which parent is going to be the parent of record on the FAFSA and on the initial profile, and the other parent will complete the other parent will complete the non-custodial profile. So first step, if the student lives with someone, most of the time that would be the parent who's on the FAFSA and profile. If the student lives with both parents equally, then it would be the parent who provides more of their financial resources in the year in advance of the application. And if everything's exactly equal down the line, then as a family, you'll need to make a decision about which parent is on which application.
Okay, next question. Will I get more aid if I apply before the deadline? Short answer is no. But more specifically, we do suggest you file sooner rather than later. I think it would be beneficial for a student to complete those 8 applications as soon as possible, just so you can follow up with a financial aid office right before we get too close to the deadline to make sure we have your 8 applications. Make sure there's something missing from your total financial aid application that you may need to follow up on. So no, we wouldn't be able to award you more aid if you complete sooner, but this will help to ensure your 8 applications are completed on time. So if you haven't applied yet and you're interested, please don't delay.
And remember that you can check the BU portal to make sure that we have the applications that you submitted if you've already submitted them.
Right.
All right, so this is getting into a little bit of nitty-gritty, but it's actually something that comes up a lot when families are completing the application. When you're completing the applications, particularly for parents, you're providing not only taxable income, the income that's on your 2017 tax return, but you're also providing what's referred to as untaxed income. And the primary source of untaxed income would be contributions to retirement plans. And you're getting that information from your 2017 W-2, box 12. Oftentimes there's a pretty big number in there, and families get kind of confused about whether or not they're supposed to include them, and it's code DD, D as in dog. That is actually has to do with your medical insurance and the type of medical insurance you have. It is not untaxed income, it's informational only. So when you're completing your applications and it asks about information for contributions to retirement, untaxed retirement plans, and it says go to box 12 and you see this big number and there's a code DD next to it, ignore that one and go on to the other codes. Both the FAFSA and the profile tell you which code specifically you should be referencing to come up with a total to put in that field.
This is a good one. How accurate is the net price calculator? So you may have seen the net price calculator on our financial aid website or on any other financial aid website for different schools that you might be looking at. Answer this question, I think it really depends. It's one of these things that is subject to the accuracy of the information that a student and family is providing. I like to think of a net price calculator as a useful tool to give a family an indication of what kind of eligibility they may have and get an eyeball on what they might be able to expect from Boston University or another school that they're applying to. But I wouldn't say that it is, your perfect window into what exactly you can expect for financial assistance. It's really a useful tool for encouraging families to apply for financial assistance.
Okay, so some of you might have already completed the FAFSA, and you get an immediate response from them that tells you what your federal EFC is. And the question is, if my federal EFC is really high, does that mean I won't get aid? Not necessarily. The federal EFC is going to be used to determine your eligibility for federal financial assistance, but we will be looking at the CSS profile and evaluating that as well to determine your eligibility for Boston University aid. And those calculations are slightly different, and the ways in which information is reported is slightly different. So just because you feel that you have a federal EFC that is high doesn't necessarily mean you won't get aid. So I'd encourage you to just go through the whole application process and let us determine whether or not you do have eligibility. And if you feel like it seems unusually high and maybe there's some things you haven't been able to express through the application process, you have the opportunity on the profile or by sending us a follow-up email or letter giving us those specifics of the reasons why the EFC might not really be representative of your ability to contribute to education.
That's a good one. Is VA disability income or combat pay considered income for a financial aid application? I like the punk, actually. Can you do this one?
So combat pay and VA disability income may be considered untaxed income in some instances and not in others. Some combat pay for officers who have higher income through combat pay that may be included in your taxable income, and so there's actually an opportunity on the FAFSA to tell us what the combat pay is, and then that will mean that we can take it out of your federal calculation because it will not be included as income for the federal calculation. For the institutional calculation, you do need to let us know about it, and then we will treat that we will take a look at it and see how it impacts with the rest of your eligibility. So you may be asked questions about that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be included and impact your eligibility, but you do have the opportunity on the FAFSA to have the combat pay removed, particularly if it's included in your taxable income. You won't report it at all if it's untaxed on the FAFSA.
Okay. Do you give aid to international students? We do not award need-based financial assistance to international students. We do have certain merit scholarships an international student may be able to qualify for. However, we award merit scholarships on a limited basis. So I wouldn't say necessarily that international students aren't qualified for any financial assistance here at Boston University. They're mainly awarded, if they qualify for anything, it's going to be different forms of merit-based scholarships. Okay, last question. We have 5 more minutes.
Maybe we can get both of these in.
All right. Try this one first.
What if the non-custodial parent doesn't fill out the applications? Well, we understand that there are circumstances where it might be difficult to have the non-custodial parent complete the application. So if you think that that's a possibility, I would encourage you to complete the waiver request, and so we can assess whether or not we may be able to waive the non-custodial parent. We understand that there are different family circumstances, and we want to give you the opportunity to tell us about that. So that would be your first step is to request it. And if you've asked a non-custodial parent to complete the application and they haven't, then you might want to get back in touch with us and let us know what is going on, and we can determine whether or not it can be waived. So you can complete the waiver request, or you can send us an email, but we'd encourage you that you complete the waiver.
Okay. Last question. When will we receive a financial aid award decision? You receive a financial aid award decision, same time the admission decisions are released. And again, for a regular decision population, that is the end of March. Typically, it's the 3rd or 4th Saturday of March. You'll get an email from us that will say, hey, check out your BU student portal. We've got an update for you about your admission financial aid award. You navigate there, and that's where you see your decision.
All right. I think that's bringing us to the end. So I would encourage you to keep in mind that the presentation is going to be available. We will send it to you via email, and then also it's going to be available on the admissions website. So if you want to go back and revisit your time with us, you have the opportunity to do so. The financial aid website, great source of information. The admissions website, great source of information. And then, of course, you can reach out to us via email directly if you have specific questions, or give us a call Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.